Okay, we are back. Another episode of our revision series. This time we're covering a completely different topic, which is refreshing because I was kind of done with authoritarian states myself. We are going to look at another paper two topic, probably the last paper two topic we do before I transition to some paper three stuff, and it's causes and effects of 20th century wars. This episode is going to focus on World War One. This episode is going to focus on this first bullet point from the IB guide right here, which I wrote out right here: economic, ideological, political, territorial, and other causes of the First World War. Now, in my opinion, this is a pretty easy question to answer, right? If you get anything about causes of two wars from the 20th century, I'm immediately going World War One and World War Two. If there is a word in there and they say what are the territorial or military or whatever, I think it's really easy to manipulate that question into your strong point if you use a really good thesis. So let's go through this, and hopefully it helps you kind of organize your thoughts, organize your content, just like the authoritarian states one did. Economic. Oh, I gotta bring myself up here. I'm cutting off some important stuff. All right. Economic causes of war. All right. Someone walked in for office hours, and I'm not going to start the video over. They forgot a question, came back in, but again, not deleting the video because, whatever. So, economic causes of war. Again, this is the First World War. Again, just trying to organize some of your thoughts in here. Industrialization definitely fits into this question. I kind of put here that it was a major source of tensions and competition between not only raw materials, but the markets you were eventually going to sell those finished products in, all became a huge point of tension in the years leading up to World War One. You could really talk about Britain and Germany here and their competition in the steel and iron industry, and that kind of competition against. When we were in class, I often said that Germany upset the balance of power, and that was a major cause of World War One. If you're going to say something along those lines, I think it really fits nicely into an economic kind of mold. Okay, the scramble for Africa had ended, and now sights were set on new colonies in other places, particularly Asia. So again, that level of that's going to be a major source of tension. Um, when you're talking about the economic cause of World War One, you could also very easily talk about the naval race and how these bloated economies also gave way to showing off economic strength through new technology in naval vessels, i.e., the dreadnought. And again, that's going to be a huge race between Germany and Britain after 1906. And then again, kind of coupling with that same idea, showing off economic strength meant new technology. So you've got machine guns, you've got gas, you've got tanks, you've got all of these new weapons of war being kind of researched and developed leading up to World War One. Okay. So a thesis that I threw in there for you in this one, I've got like a thesis for every one of these. Countries' economies, due to trade, colonial expansion, and industrialization, became so interconnected leading up to World War One. Historians can trace all causes of war back to economic ties. Right. So that's what I mean about this is super moldable. This question, I think that you can really show off your strengths by having this kind of economic centered thesis and tie everything kind of back into that. I gave you a Marxist historian perspective here. War was inevitable because of competition caused by capitalism. Specific leaders didn't matter. So again, this is really honing in that idea that economy was at the center of the causes of World War One, and everything tied back into that. Right. Okay, military causes of war. With growing competition, military expansion was inevitable. I just explained that. So, again, economy and military kind of go hand in hand. The bigger your economy gets, the stronger your economy gets, the more that you're going to show off, you're going to flex on your neighbors to try and show them that you're not to be messed with, right? Hopefully, this is making sense and kind of bringing back some stuff that we talked about in class. And that flexing is also going to be another major source of tension, because if countries in a region are all flexing on each other, they're all going to try to outproduce the other in terms of military capabilities, right? Uh, German policy of economic expansion, or military expansion kind of went hand in hand with their foreign policy in hopes of getting a colonial empire. Right, Germany is the new kid on the block. They're out of the loop when it comes to colonial possessions, and now they want to get colonial possessions. So their expansionist policy also requires them to have a stronger military in order to achieve that place in the sun. Right, which we'll talk about in a minute. So again, kind of everything can tie back into this idea of economics and military. All right. Here's a little chart that I made for you guys about the big three powers, kind of population, army, first class ships, iron and steel, and revenue from trade. And you really kind of see where some of these sources of tension are starting to boil over. Again, look at iron and steel between Germany and Britain, right? Also, with that iron and steel being so close, look at the revenue from trade, right? Germany's nowhere near England. That's that colonial a drive, that colonial tension in a number right there. All right. Thesis: rapid military expansion caused overconfidence among states, which led to poor military planning leading up to the First World War. Right. From studying the First World War, we know that it wasn't a good war. We know that they weren't prepared for that war. And that's that overconfidence piece coming into play. Fritz Fischer says German military expansion was the main cause of World War One. And AJP Taylor is going to say it was poor military planning was the main cause that World War One turned out the way that it did. Right. So again, this is just more pieces of evidence to try and kind of steer your direction steer your essay in a direction that you're comfortable with. Ideological causes, right? Nationalism, right? Super powerful toxin, if you will. I kind of like to refer to that. Especially in the case of World War One, because that nationalism is going to have a lot of negative connotations, and it's going to cause a lot of tension between people. Some examples of German nationalism is that blood and iron idea left behind by Bismarck. For some of the Slavic states, you've got Pan-Slavism, the creation of a Slavic state, and anti-Austrian expansionism at the same time. Those kind of go hand in hand. A big driver at this time was social Darwinism, right? And social Darwinism is going to be used as a justification for imperialism, right? Our people are better than the people that we're taking over. By taking them over, this is actually a gift. Like, we're giving them culture, we're giving them religion, we're giving them industry. So social Darwinism is definitely a word that you might want to throw into a paper here if you're talking about those ideological causes of World War One. It's also that social Darwinism, along with that nationalism idea. If you put them together, it's going to create xenophobia, which is that fear of things that are different, right? So all three of those are a perfect storm, an ideological storm, right? I put imperialism as an ideology, right? That idea, that conquest mentality, I threw it in there as an ideology. Again, as I talked about earlier, the scramble for Africa, it's that caused a lot of tension. Who's going to get what in Africa? And now that it's over, who's going to get what in the next place that we're going to go? And that's going to cause tension in the Balkans as the Ottoman Empire is falling, as well as tension in Asia, as we see as that is the next place to go, not necessarily for the raw materials, but definitely for the markets that it provided us. And again, if you don't have colonies in Asia and you don't have access to those markets, i.e. Germany, that's going to cause a large part of the tension puzzle that we're trying to piece together here. Kaiser Wilhelm, that's where he's going to come in and say place in the sun. It's going to fuel these colonial tensions, fuel these rivalries, and have Germany say that we were close. Colonies are going to put us over the edge. In order to get those colonies, we're going to expand our militaries, right? Thesis: countries radicalize ideologies to justify their territorial expansion / military expansion. The idea of being better than or entitled to cause rapidly rising tensions among states and groups. I think "and groups" is really important to throw in there. Political causes of war, right? This all kind of goes back to Germany and Bismarck. And Bismarck truly believed that the only way to preserve Germany and give Germany strength in this already tension-filled, very developed area of Europe was through the web of alliances. So he's going to create the web of alliance. He's also going to marry and interconnect bloodlines to strengthen that German position. And there we've got like the dual alliance, the triple alliance, the Entente Cordiale, all that stuff from our World War One unit. The system of alliances intensified all other causes and shortened the fuse that would lead to an all out war. Here's another easy one, I think, to play, right? That if you just take militarism on its own, or you just take economic causes on their own, or you just take ideological causes on their own, it's not enough to really get to that war. It's the fact that the alliance were brought in on top of all that. That's what I mean by intensified all of the other causes and then shorten the fuse, right? There's not much room left in terms of tension before everything is going to pop. Territorial causes, competition over specific lands led to the immediate competition between states. We could talk about Alsace-Lorraine. We could talk about the Balkans. We could talk about the Polish corridor. We could talk about Asia, in particularly China. Because the colonized world was so vast, the competition, that's supposed to say created, sorry, over what was left caused immediate sparks between the world powers, right? Again, this is that drive. You could very easily take this thesis about territorial expansion and write an essay about economy and military at the same time. Hopefully you're seeing how interconnected a lot of this stuff is. That's the end of this one. Super short, sweet, to the point in terms of content. I'm just trying to get you to think about these ideas in kind of smaller categories to help you maybe piece together your own thesis going into paper 2. I'll be back with more in the next episode, and we'll talk about short and long-term causes of the First World War. Hope this helps.